My name is Daniel Whitmore, and this is the story I've never told anyone. I call it, I was just passing by, until she said, I keep the porch light on for you. It begins on a night I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near her street. I just left the office late again. The glow of monitors still burned in my eyes, and the stench of burned coffee clung to my clothes. I worked in corporate finance back then, trapped in the grinding cycle of numbers, deadlines, and the constant weight of my father's expectations pressing down on me. He'd built his entire reputation on success. Whitmore and Associates wasn't just a firm, it was a family name, and he made damn sure I knew I was walking in his shadow. So when I took the long way home that night, it wasn't for scenery. It was escape. The air was damp, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. My car idled at a red light, and I glanced left, almost by accident. That's when I saw her porch. Not her, not yet, just the porch. The light was on. A soft amber glow spilling across the wooden steps, cutting a warm shape into the darkness. I don't know why I slowed down. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was the ache of loneliness that gnawed at me in those days. But I pulled over, killed the engine, and just sat there. That's when the door opened, and she stepped out. Daniel! Her voice carried across the yard like she'd been expecting me. My chest tightened. I hadn't seen her in years. Her name was Elise. We'd met once before at a company dinner 3 years earlier. She wasn't part of my world, not directly. She was the wife of one of my father's business partners, though younger than him by almost 20 years. I'd only spoken to her briefly that night, polite small talk over glasses of wine. But even then, I'd noticed the way her eyes lingered when mine did. The way her laughter sounded like something she didn't often allow herself. And now here she was, standing barefoot on that porch like some ghost I'd conjured just by driving down her street. I didn't mean to stop, I stammered, already halfway out of my car. I was just passing by, she finished for me. Her smile was soft but sad, and her voice dropped into something quieter, something secret. I keep the porch light on for you. For me. The words hit harder than they should have. Before I could answer, she turned back toward the house, leaving the door open behind her like an invitation, and I followed. Inside, her home smelled of cedar and something faintly floral. The living room was neat but lived in. Books stacked on side tables, a throw blanket draped carelessly over the couch. Elise herself moved with a kind of restrained elegance, like someone who had learned to keep her beauty hidden until it was safe to show. She poured me a drink without asking if I wanted one, slid it across the table, then finally looked at me. I wondered how long it would take before you came here, she said. Her words rattled me. Elise, I didn't come here for Daniel, she interrupted, and her eyes flickered with something sharp, almost desperate. Don't lie. Not to me. The room seemed smaller after that. I could hear the tick of the wall clock, the faint hum of a fridge somewhere in the kitchen. And I realized then, she wasn't playing some romantic game. She was drowning, and I just stepped into her storm. Her husband, Arthur, was powerful, cruel in the ways men with unchecked money and influence often are. I remembered the way he'd spoken to her at that company dinner, like she was a piece of furniture meant to impress guests. And now, 3 years later, I saw the cracks in her composure. The porch light, the quiet plea in her voice. It all made sense. You shouldn't have left your car there, she whispered, almost to herself. If he drives by and sees. She stopped. The fear in her eyes said the rest. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to leave, to walk back out that door and never return. But another part, the part that had been suffocating in boardrooms and endless expectations, felt alive for the first time in years just standing there with her. Elise, I said carefully, why me? Her lips curved into the faintest, saddest smile. Because you look at me like I still exist. The words cracked something open inside me. I wanted to reach for her, to erase the years of silence and distance between us. But instead, I sat there, frozen, my pulse hammering in my ears. That was the moment her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She flinched, grabbed it quickly, and turned the screen away from me. I caught only a glimpse of the name Arthur. Her hands trembled as she silenced the call. "You need to go," she whispered. "Not tonight. Not yet." I stood slowly, my body torn between reason and desire. I walked to the door, the porch light washing over me one last time, and as I stepped outside, she said it again, softer than before. "I keep the porch light on for you." I drove home in silence that night, my chest aching with questions I couldn't answer. Why me? Why now? And most of all, what would happen if I went back? I didn't sleep. Her words looped in my head like a song I couldn't turn off. And by morning, the decision was already made. I knew I'd go back. Not because I should, because I couldn't not. I told myself I wouldn't go back. I told myself the first night was just chance, a collision of loneliness and circumstance. But the truth is that I was waiting for darkness to fall again, like a child waits for Christmas morning. And when it did, I found myself steering down the same road, telling myself lies I didn't believe, just to see if the light's on, just to drive. No harm in that. The porch light was on, and when I parked a little further down the street this time, Elise was already standing outside, arms wrapped around herself against the chill, almost like she knew I'd come back. Inside, the ritual began. She poured drinks, hers weaker than mine, though she never said so, and I sank into the couch that had already begun to feel like familiar ground. We spoke at first about safe things. Books on her shelf, the paintings on the wall, the way she hated the echo in the house when it was too quiet. But it wasn't long before the silences stretched and deepened, heavy with everything we weren't saying. And then, slowly, it spilled out. Her marriage wasn't a marriage at all. Arthur treated her like an accessory, paraded her at events but ignored her in every room that mattered. She spoke of cold dinners, of being silenced mid-sentence, of bruises that weren't always visible. "He tells me," she said one night, her voice brittle, "that without him I'd be nothing. Do you know what it does to a person to hear that every day?" I wanted to reach across to take her hand, but I didn't. Not yet, because somewhere in the back of my mind was the gnawing awareness of who Arthur was. Not just her husband, but a man who had a stake in my father's empire. A man who could crush me with a word. And yet, every time I told myself to stop going, I found myself there again. Weeks blurred. My life became split between two worlds. By day, I sat in glass-walled conference rooms, listening to Arthur's booming voice as he closed deals with my father, pretending I wasn't seeing the hollowness in Elisa's eyes across the mahogany tables. By night, I sat in her living room under the halo of that porch light, listening to the sound of her laughter return in pieces, like someone learning to walk again. I told myself it wasn't an affair. Not really. We hadn't crossed that line, not yet. But the truth is, we crossed it the moment she said, "I keep the porch light on for you." One evening, as she handed me a glass of wine, our fingers brushed, lingered a second too long. My heart stuttered. She met my eyes and whispered, almost like she was testing herself, "Do you ever wonder if this is worth the risk?" I didn't answer, because I knew it already was. The first time she touched me, it wasn't some reckless, heated moment. It was quieter than that, more devastating. I told her about my father, how he expected me to be his mirror, how nothing I did was ever enough. She listened, truly listened, her hand resting lightly on mine. That simple touch undid me. When she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against mine, it felt like confession and absolution at once. And when her lips finally brushed mine, the world fell silent. I should have stopped. God, I knew I should have. But once you've tasted something you've spent years starving for, how do you turn away? It didn't take long for the walls to close in. Arthur started watching me more closely at the firm, subtle but pointed. He'd ask strange questions. "Long drives home these days, Daniel? You seem distracted. Burning the candle at both ends?" And my father, always perceptive, always suspicious, pulled me aside one afternoon. "Arthur's a friend. Powerful one. Don't jeopardize that. Whatever it is you think you're hiding, end it before it costs you more than you can pay." His words struck like a warning bell, but I couldn't tell him, couldn't tell anyone. And Elise, She was slipping further into desperation. "He's been angrier lately," she whispered one night, her hands shaking around her glass. "He asks where I go, who I talk to. He checks my phone when I'm in the shower. Daniel, I don't know how much longer I can do this." Her fear was contagious. It seeped into my bones. I began to glance over my shoulder, to double-check doors and windows, to wake in the night with the sickening certainty that Arthur knew. And maybe he did. The breaking point came on a storm-heavy night. Rain lashed against her windows, and thunder rattled the frames. Elise was pacing, her hair unbound, her movements restless. "I can't keep pretending," she said, almost to herself. "Every time I hear his car in the driveway, I think it's the night he finds out. And if he does, Daniel..." Her voice cracked. I crossed the room, took her by the shoulders. "Then come with me. Leave him." Her eyes met mine, wide and trembling. "And go where? Do you think he wouldn't find us? He owns the courts, the police, everything. We'll find a way," I insisted, though even I wasn't sure how. And then she said it, the words that shattered whatever illusions of safety we had left. "He told me once," she whispered, "that if I ever left him, he'd ruin anyone who touched me. He said he'd bury them." The lightning outside cracked, lighting her face in stark relief. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just about love anymore. It was about survival. When I left that night, soaked to the bone, I saw it. A black car parked 2 houses down. Engine idling. Lights off. I couldn't see the driver, but I knew. I knew we weren't alone anymore. The black car didn't move for hours. I sat in mine, a block away, watching through the blur of rain until my hands cramped around the steering wheel. When it finally pulled away, I drove home sick with the certainty that Arthur knew. The next morning, at the office, he greeted me with his usual booming charm. But beneath it, something had shifted. His handshake lingered, his smile too sharp. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "Long nights, Daniel?" It wasn't a question. It was a warning. For the next week, every step I took felt like walking across a minefield. My father noticed, of course. He cornered me in his office, door closed, blinds drawn. "I don't know what you're doing," he said, voice cold. "But Arthur is circling. If you've entangled yourself where you shouldn't, untangle it now. Do you understand?" The silence between us was a chasm. For once, I didn't argue. I just walked out, leaving him staring after me. That night, I didn't go to Elise's. I forced myself to stay away, to sit in my apartment with the lights off, gripping a drink I couldn't bring myself to swallow. But just after midnight, my phone buzzed. Her message, "He's out. Please, I can't be alone tonight." My resolve broke. The house was quiet when I arrived, the porch light glowing like a lighthouse pulling me in. Elise opened the door before I could knock, her eyes red-rimmed, her hands cold when they touched mine. "I thought I could manage it," she whispered, "but I can't. Not anymore." And then she kissed me like the world was ending. Maybe, in a way, it was. We didn't speak much that night. We didn't have to. Every unspoken word hung between us, heavy and unrelenting. I fell asleep beside her, heart pounding with equal parts love and terror, and woke to the sound of a car in the driveway. Panic ripped through me. Elise bolted upright, her face drained of color. "It's him," she mouthed. There was no time to think. I grabbed my shirt, stumbled into the hallway. The front door opened downstairs. Heavy footsteps, deliberate and slow. "Elise," Arthur's voice echoed, smooth and poisonous. "Are you awake?" She motioned for me to hide, and I ducked into a side room, pressing myself against the wall. From there, I could hear everything. Arthur's voice sharpened. "Whose car is that outside?" Silence. Then Elise's voice, trembling but steady. "A friend. Just a friend." The slap cracked through the house like thunder. My body lurched forward, fists clenched. Every instinct screamed at me to tear down those stairs. But if I did, it wouldn't be a fight. It would be an execution. Arthur's voice dropped, low and venomous. "You think I don't know? You think I haven't seen him here?" Another silence. And then Elise's voice, broken but defiant. If you already know, then why pretend? The weight of those words hung in the air. And then nothing. Just the sound of his footsteps retreating, the door slamming, his car roaring down the street. I stumbled from the room, shaking. Elise was on the floor, one hand pressed to her cheek, tears streaking her face. "Daniel," she whispered. "He won't let this go." And I knew she was right. We didn't see each other for days after that. She stopped answering her phone. Her porch light stayed dark. At the office, Arthur carried himself like a man who'd already won. He smiled too easily, clapped me on the back as if daring me to flinch. My father barely looked at me. The silence was worse than his lectures. When Elise finally called, her voice was barely audible. He said, "If I don't end it, he'll ruin you, your father, your whole family." The words hollowed me out, because I knew she believed him, and so did I. "Elise," I said, my throat tight, "then let him ruin me." "Don't let him ruin you." She didn't answer, only silence. The last time I saw her was not at her house, not in some secret midnight meeting. It was at a firm dinner weeks later. She was at Arthur's side, flawless in her red dress, her smile practiced to perfection. Our eyes met across the room for the briefest second. And in that second, I saw everything. Her apology, her grief, her love she couldn't risk showing. And then she turned away. Life went on as it always does. My father never spoke of it again. Arthur remained untouchable. Elise vanished into the role she'd been forced to play, and I carried the weight of a story no one would ever believe. Sometimes, driving home late from the office, I still find myself taking the long way, past the street where the light once burned. It's never on now. Not for me. Not for anyone. If there's a lesson in all this, it's not the kind you'll find in boardrooms or balance sheets. Simpler, more brutal. Love isn't always enough to save someone. Sometimes the world they live in, the walls built around them, are stronger than the love you can give. But I'll tell you, this one light, one voice telling you that you still exist, can keep you alive in the darkest season of your life. For me, it was Elise. For her, maybe it was me. And though I lost her, I'll never forget the night she looked at me and said, "I keep the porch light on for you."